It'll only be about 30 minutes. This whole thing.
Oh, okay.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. My next guest is been in the restaurant business for 9 years. He's been in the lots of different positions along the way, starting from the bottom up, along with different restaurants. But one particular restaurant, he was shoved into a sous chef position for 5 months, while kept his head above water. I want to welcome Casey. Welcome.
Hey, Andrew.
So what's the difference between a sous chef and a regular chef? I've always heard sous chefs of it growing up, but I've never really heard much of a difference between a chef and a sous chef. I just hear them. What's the difference?
The title chef is something that you earn over almost a lifetime's worth of experience, trial by errors, screwing up, learning, and then a whole lot of success and a whole lot of failure. And you've put all that time and effort in. You know, you've got so many cookbooks in your head, and that's that. A sous chef is somebody who's a step down from them, that's either aspiring or is comfortable in their spot. They are the more hands on the ground. They're involved with everything. They supervise everything. They are also heavily in charge of the kitchen. But when the chef comes in, it's the chef's kitchen, and you do what the chef says. Sometimes the sous chef will run something entirely different, but as long as the product still comes out the same way with the same passion being made, that's a little bit of the difference. The sous chef doesn't have as much experience or can have more. It's just the different level of management.
Okay, so is there one group of people that do more prep than the other? Or is that another like position for doing prep? Is sous chef part of it?
Prep. If it's the slow season and they had to cut a lot of people due to staffing and funds, then yeah, sous chefs will do prep, chef will do prep. It's all about what hands need to be active in doing things.
Where exactly, what kind of restaurant do you work in?
Right now I work at St. Anthony's Hospital in the dietary department. But before that, I was working at Canterwood as a lead line cook and as a banquet chef over there for a bit till I switched jobs, and now I have way better benefits, and I have to work 8 hours instead of 14 hours a day.
And the same amount of pay?
Oh, no, a lot more pay. A lot more pay.
Even better.
Oh, yes. And this beautiful thing called paid time off. Yeah.
You're lucky. You're not like, most people barely even get any. I don't think you even get any time off. There's no like written laws here that says that you have to have a certain amount of hours for vacation. It's only sick stuff.
Yeah, you only get sick leave, and that was pretty much it, aside from regular holidays and days you request off that are unpaid.
Man, it's just like you do all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy is what, Shining used to say.
Oh, it's true.
So going back to your like the kitchen, why you said that managers have not the managers, but the chefs and all around in the kitchen, and I think you mean even throughout the restaurant, they have different uniforms than like everybody else. So why do you think that's the case?
Just to distinguish the different level of your position, because the chef's supposed to be the cleanest one. Unless something's going down in the kitchen, they have to be involved. But it's one of those, if you've put in 40 years of experience, you should be standing out because you've earned it. Some earn it rightly, and some earn it just because they got a sticker. But it's a hierarchy system, and it's always been that way, and it's been working for a long time, and there's nothing wrong with it as long as the system and the ship works perfectly.
Yeah, and I'm actually in favor of some sort of hierarchies if there's an expert involved, much like a teacher is, and to the student. It's not as a man, as long as it's not viewed as a manager and more as a facilitator or like a guide. I mean, that's a different kind of thing. Is that kind of how the feel you get from the chef? Is the chef more of a guide or a supervisor?
Oh, the chef's always supposed to be a guide. The chef is supposed to be somebody that, because my chef right now, even at the hospital, she's been in charge of multiple different restaurants. She's opened a couple, and now she got a really lucky, cushy job, even though she's working out of a a separate company. I think it's Thomas Cuisine that she's working out of right now, but she's working with the hospital. She's hired out into it. But the chef is supposed to have all the information and just wants to teach and wants to be involved. So go back to your original question. Sorry about that. I lost track for a second.
Oh, no. My whole point is the reality of being a chef more of a supervisor role or like
Oh,
a
yeah, it is
facilitator guide?
totally. It's a supervisor, but you are being the guide. The weirdest part about being in the restaurant industry is hopefully you start from a dishwasher and work your way up due to your passion and your drive and wanting to. But when you get to the chef position, the majority of your time is paperwork. So you have aspirations and goals of opening up your own place and being involved, but the majority of your time is spent doing not what you wanted to be doing, but you are running the thing you wanted to run. So it's kind of weird in a manner of speaking.
That's almost a tragedy. That you're actually not even doing the work. The whole reason why you're in restaurant anyway is to prepare food and seeing that like satisfaction of the customer, right? And now the chef is acting more of a manager than a guide at that point. Is that what I'm interpreting right?
No, a true chef is both. You can have chefs that are just angry people, but they make the most amazing, beautiful food. I've had a chef he was in his late 50s. Best way to describe him, he was just a grizzled old dog, and he wasn't making a lot of happy noises. He would just growl, snarl, but you could tell if he was in a good mood, bad mood. But the guy was like the most kind human being ever. And yes, he was the boss. He would lay down the law when he had to, but he would have your back. He would teach you 2 seconds, little tips and tricks that he's learned. They do help. They're there for a reason. They wouldn't be in that position if they didn't have all the information. They want people to learn and grow and get better, but they do have to be the boss.
And my thing is like what you're saying is there needs to be a system of accountability, correct?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
right. Now the question is how do you go about that accountability, or is there a different? It's more like, is there a different way than just having one person? Maybe having multiple point of views, holding each other accountable for like misdeeds and stuff. Is that possible to think of as in that situation?
Entirely. So in the places I've worked, you've got a system where you have the head chef and then you have a sous chef, and then underneath that you have leads. You have a PM lead, an AM lead, and depending on how big the restaurant is, you'll have a mid shift lead. So you've already got three brackets of who's in charge, and then underneath that you've got your saute, your flat top, your fryer, your pantry, planche, your dish pit, your preppers, and that's that. And the PM leads in general are supposed to be working with the whole team the whole percent of the time. They're the first go-to for questions and answers, and then after that you go to the sous chef, and then you go directly to the chef. So all these people are in positions due to experience, time, accountability, and effort, and hopefully their passion and drive, as opposed to a couple places where you have somebody who's put in a management position just because one of the higher ups, they're their best friend and they just needed a gig, and sometimes that doesn't pan out. But everything works great when it works great, and when it doesn't work great, it doesn't work great.
And so that's my kind of concern is it's great that when it works great, yay, it's great. But like I've noticed, to me, a lot of structures are kind of similarly like a restaurant where you have this sort of hierarchy of people holding each other accountable. But oftentimes I've seen it, mostly of the time, people above you shit down below people below them is what in my experience. Is that kind of your experience too?
I've worked in a couple establishments like that where management looks down, all they see is shit, and the lowers, when they look up, all they see is assholes. I've worked in a couple establishments like that. I learned a lot, but luckily I left those positions, and now I'm in a lot more friendly environment. I love my team. I love my crew. There's obviously, no matter where you go, you're going to have certain people that are always going to be in certain roles. You got the smart ass, you got the guy who knows everything, the one who's never wrong, the person who's always trying to please everybody, then you got the one that drives everybody up the wall. You always have those people, and no matter what job you go to, those roles always have to exist. I don't know why, but it's true. So you can have a system. Go ahead.
Oh, I was about to say, and with a system like that, is maybe you could devise a system that accounts for that rather than try to like crush it, you know?
Checks and balances. It's supposed to go that way. So you have the leads, they are directly involved with everything, supervising and just being regular Joe, except they've got a one little step up above you. They are held for a lot more accountability and they have more repercussions. So if I was to screw something up and you were the lead that was in charge of the shift that was going on at that point in time, I sent out something bad. Obviously, I would get talked to, but you would also get talked to, and if it was something really big, it would go up the food chain, but you are directly in charge of the repercussions and the scolding and or giving out more information. So it's checks and balances. The people, the lower the lead is, they have more access to the bodies and then the direct bodies that they're working with. And then you've got the supervisor and then the bigger supervisor, just to put labels on things. Everything has to have a label, apparently.
And it's easier to blame people when there's a label on it. And so instead of holding themselves accountable.
Well, that's go ahead.
No, I didn't say, it wasn't going to say anything.
Well, the reason why hopefully somebody wants to get in a management position is due to the fact they want the team to succeed and they want to get better and they want to shoulder that extra responsibility. When I've worked with people that could literally run a whole entire place with their eyes closed, but they don't want to be held accountable for their own actions. They don't want to screw up and then get in trouble. They just want to be able to, oh, it was just the lead's fault. He didn't tell me what to do. And it's like, no, you were aware of what you did yourself, but you just want to pass off the failure to somebody else that's above you.
So how often does it do people above actually give like undesirable tasks to the people below and then keep the more popular tasks for them?
That's happened in one of the restaurants I was working at, where the one of the leads, he became a sous chef later on. Him and I never saw eye to eye on a whole bunch of things. Uh, we were just like water and oil. We just wouldn't mix. And any single time he had an opportunity to, yeah, he would have me peeling potatoes. He'd have me brunoise this, doing this, that, and the other thing,
Mhm.
tourneing, all the annoying, tedious tasks. So that way he could be working the line and doing what he wanted to do, as opposed to letting me do my job when we had the preppers. But if we can cut labor, then by all means we can cut labor. I understand that. Doesn't mean I
Yeah.
enjoy it. I understand how the system works, even though it doesn't work 100% all the time.
I don't think you can get any system that be perfected all the time. But what you can do is like reduce it as much as you can, and I think you really can, because it's not fair that they do that to hold the better ones themselves. I always think, why can't you just share it amongst everybody? Get rid of these guys who hold these desirable tasks and just share it amongst everybody in the kitchen and hire more chefs. So in other words, is there really a point where you can have too many cooks in the kitchen?
Oh yeah, there definitely can be. Sometimes, yes, many hands make light work, but sometimes many hands screw a whole lot of things up and they get in the way. But
Do you think if
the
they
soup,
had more educated, if they were educated and trained on that, that would happen less?
oh yeah, more education. Education. Everybody needs to be well educated as far as I'm concerned. Whether it's
Yeah.
the best kind of education you can get in certain fields is by actual experience on the ground. Because you can read a book
Agreed.
on how to climb Mount Everest, but that's not going to actually help you climb Mount Everest unless you actually attempt to climb Mount Everest.
Agreed,
But
man.
as for the people that are shirking, they're hoarding all the good roles and giving out the bad roles. That's boiling it down. That's people are people. It's human error. You've got some great apples out there that just will give you the shirt off their back, and you have some people out there that'll rip everybody else's shirt off so they never get cold.
Do you think
It
that's just
just depends.
because? Oh, sorry. All I was about to
Go ahead.
say is, do you think that it's less about human nature as much as the institution that forces people to think that way? You know, just like prisoner guard starts. Eventually, you start looking at prisoners like shit, and it's just. I do you think it's kind of the product of the institution of looking. If you have a hierarchy, you're almost like human nature is to look down on them, and I think we should.
In a,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
No, I was about to say something else. I was trailing.
There was a big test. I don't know if it was done in the States or if it was done in England, where it was a college test. They got either 20 or 40 people, and they split them up. These people came from like rich people, poor people, college kids, trust fund babies, the whole demographic, and they had half the percent being inmates, or the majority being inmates, and they had the other half being guards. And then amongst the guards, they divvied up in a hierarchy system. And yeah, they went straight into the mentality. They went straight into the roles, and supposedly, I mean, HR doesn't really exist for the employees; it exists for the business. You're supposed to have checks and balances within your own team to make sure that you don't have people abusing power, but humans being humans, they'll always find a way to get a little ahead of the game if they possibly can. So it depends. I've had one of my friends, he still works as a security officer at a jail. He was super excited about the job. The money was really great. He needed it for his family and everything. And he was the most kind-hearted guy. And a couple years into it, he definitely started getting a little more colder and a little more jaded. And I was talking to him over a beer a couple times ago, and I asked him, I was like, so what happened? He's like, well, when you have to deal with the amount of stuff that we have to deal with, and we always get checked, but they never get checked. We're always like, you have to watch out sometimes. Like, yeah, you'll get stabbed, you'll get spat on. They treat you like you're utter garbage. But if they didn't play stupid games, they wouldn't have won stupid prizes. Kind of that manner of speaking. So
Right.
you can take the most kind-hearted person, loving person, and put them in a crappy situation for years on time where they just get dealt bad hands. Yeah, it's gonna take a real tough person to stay kind-hearted and positive.
But
A lot of weird
that
stuff.
takes like a philosopher king, a superhuman to do that in that institution. It's almost like you kind of have to fulfill that role in the institution. If you don't, just like in maybe in management and with a hierarchy in a restaurant, you're just out. You get out
Oh, yeah,
because
no, sorry.
that's just
There's
how it works.
Yes, it also depends on. There's a lot of factors. Blanket statements don't really work for everything because you'll work in a small kitchen where it's just the chef running everything. They're in charge of everything. They have to cook everything because it's just
Because
themselves.
they
And you have the
know.
bigger. Yeah, it all depends on how much they have. You have big kitchens where you've got like French style kitchens where you've got a person working each station by themselves, and then the dish just gets passed around. There's a lot of that's many hands make light work, and then you've got the sous chefs, the leads, and the chef that are supervising and overseeing everything because they hopefully give a damn. Do they give a damn about the employees? Maybe. Do they give a damn about the food? 100%. So it just depends on what environment you want to put up with and what you can deal with at that same point in time. Because I've had employees that I've worked with that couldn't hack it due to the stress and the pressure, but they could still make great food. It just depends on what you can handle. If you're in a bad situation, see if the higher ups can change anything about your management. And if they can't, then you that's up to you to figure out, is it worth staying there? Can you learn anything? And if it's not, then beat tail and find another place. Then good luck. The restaurant industry is not for everybody. It's definitely grueling. There's always will be like the front of the house versus the back of the house mentality. Or it's like back of the house, we work between 8 to 14 hours a day off of nicotine, caffeine, and a whole bunch of other illicit substances just to keep you going because you have to do that. You work grimy jobs, you work with fire, you work with knives, you get cut, you get burned, you get things thrown at you. It's all fun and games until somebody gets upset. And when somebody gets upset, either they get over it or something actually did happen. And it's up to management to do management.
And my thing is it's like when management can do it and it should do that, but they don't always do it. I think the employees themselves can hold. I'm not saying themselves accountable because that's like human nature. They'll take advantage of it, but they can hold each other accountable because people are great at pointing out people when they fuck up, and and they don't mind that at all. And I think do you think like it could be just as effective holding people accountable that way by kind of everybody holding each other, looking at each other? I think I already asked that.
It would be great. It would be 100% great if everybody could work together 100% of the time, but it's human nature from what I've experienced and seen, and history will tell the same tale. There's the haves and the have-nots. You have the people that want more and the people who want to take more, and you have people that want to give out more. And you will always have those people in the world. So
Yes.
when you get somebody who wants to take more, who wants to be power hungry, they will always find a position that they can get into where they can get what they want, whether it's just barking orders and not caring about their actions. Yes, that's a bad seed, and management should not have allowed that person to get in there. Or hopefully, management gives them proper training to re educate themselves and be better suited for that position they're in.
And my point about this podcast about how as all workers in a workplace have more control of what's going on, the happier they'll be.
Mhm.
If you get rid of those managers and whatnot, you really I lost my train of thought. Uh you really don't need them because but let me backtrack. Now I remember. You were talking about how power hungry people. I had lost my train of thought. I smoked a little bit of herb or beforehand. And
Eh,
what happened what happened is what you should do is to avoid people who are power hungry, you should develop systems that account for those people and prevent those people from happening in the first place. Such as a place.
100%.
Do you agree that would make it place more productive?
I believe people should be held accountable for their actions 100%. I've done stupid things that I've gotten away with it due to me being friends with management, when definitely I should have been reprimanded. And I've also let people slide by a little bit due to the situation entirely. It's a big bad problem and should be addressed severely. If it's a little minor thing, whatever. It depends on your relationship with your coworkers, because you can have a management that is your best bud, and it's up to you to dictate and be responsible and hold your peers to their accountability. Because if you're just going to let somebody keep dinking around, then they're not going to get any better. They're going to assume this is the norm and just roll with it, and then it'll just escalate, as opposed to, hey, you got to nip it in the bud the first time, but that can be extreme. So you got to work within the means, because you can't just be brass tacks, fire and brimstone 24/7, because nobody really wants to work in that kind of environment unless somebody really enjoys that kind of environment. So you have to have a system that's checks and balances, but that's all. It's a tall order to ask for it when you boil it down, unless you've got people that want to be in the rules for the right reasons and they give a damn. Because it's hard to be the best friend. Well, it's like, what was it? There's like three types of managers. You've got the one that is they are law, there is no way around it. You've got the manager that wants to be your best buddy, like, hey, you want to go get a beer afterwards? And then you got the one who tries to do both, where it's like, hey, I want to be your friend. You can always come to me if you got questions or anything. I'm here for you. But also, you can't be doing that on the clock. You can do that when you're off the clock. These are the rules. I'm
Could you
sorry,
have
but it's
people
my
like
job.
that as coworkers be role models and do the same thing?
Oh, entirely. But
Then
that
why do you need
person,
managers then?
because somebody has to be held accountable, and
Who's
not
the
everybody
regulator?
wants. Yeah, somebody has to be held accountable, and to have it's easier for a system with paper trails and everything, and with more added responsibility. Hopefully you get more added pay, because if you want to be in charge of the 10 people that you're working with, sure, that rewards you an extra $2 an hour. You've got a lot more responsibilities, as opposed to just showing up and doing your job and leaving. So it's like, show up, get your coffee, do your food prep, cook the dish, and then clock out. As opposed to being the lead, you're in charge of double checking everything, you're making sure everything's running smoothly, this, that, and the other thing. And then you've got the paperwork management who's doing all the ordering, superseding everything. Then you got the chef who runs everything. And if so much as look cross-eyed at one point in time, they can be out in 2 seconds depending on the chef's mood. It depends on who wants the added responsibility on their shoulders and who wants to be able to get reprimanded for the slightest screw up. Like I said, I had one friend of mine who could do everything perfectly. He just didn't want to be in trouble for somebody else. So it just
Okay.
depends on what somebody wants
So what's
repercussion
your
wise
point?
that they can handle.
So what's your point? I missed it. I'm sorry. So you're
The,
saying
that not everybody needs to be held accountable, and it's easier to have somebody who's above you, whether it's like a half step or a full step or 10 steps up. They
okay.
have to keep people in line because not everybody wants to stay in line. It's great when everybody does. That is the perfect system because if you have a beautiful management system, they won't be a management system to you. They'll just be your coworkers, they'll be your regular bosses, and everything will go smoothly. And then sometimes it's not, and that's just that system in that establishment. Not every establishment has the same system and the same set of people that are management. It all depends.
Yeah, and what if I told you there is actually some places and restaurants that actually don't have any managers and they're just cooperatives and they work
Yeah,
collectively to figure out. Would that be interest
I've
to
heard of
you?
a couple.
Actually, it's in let's see, in Athens, Ohio. There's a place called Casa Nueva, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
worker-owned restaurant that was open since 1985. And then it
Awesome.
also there's a like another restaurant network, and it's more of a bakery, but I believe it could be applied because you do
Mm-hmm.
have like baker chefs.
Oh,
Uh,
still, still
it's in
doing well.
Berkeley since 1997. There's one that was a brewery. It's in Austin that was established in 2006 called the Black Star. And so these things do exist. Could these be
Yes,
applied to your workplace then?
they could be. Well, I work in a corporate industry, so not my workplace, but in
Why
other
not?
restaurant industries I've worked at, because it's corporate and it's at a hospital where everybody has to be held accountable. It's
So it
there's a
is what
big
it
difference.
is, in other words.
Yes, it is what it
That's a
is.
terrible reason.
It's well, it's the drink that I decided to drink because I get the most money, I get the better hours, I have PTO, I've got a retirement. It's what I'm choosing to stomach, and I believe it's worth it. I'm happier now than I've ever been before. So the pros outweigh the cons for me personally, and that's just my cup of tea.
That's
But in regular, go ahead.
No, it's just saying that makes sense. People make that choice all the time. I think a lot of people do that in whatever choice they work. Because
Oh, entirely.
I do feel, even though I'm a teacher and I have some freedom, I still feel like a slave in the sense that if I quit my job, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
starve. I'm
Oh,
totally
entirely.
dependent on work. So it's more like does it ever feel like you're just choosing which one is your overlord and which one is the most benevolent?
At times, yes. In the past restaurants that I've worked at, it definitely does seem like that, and I've worked in about 6 different restaurants. One of them, the management, they were just I wouldn't say evil. They were just really difficult, but I learned a lot from them. So stuck it out for 6 months, and then I left because I couldn't learn anything more. But I learned a lot. So it's up to the individual to work within your means, obviously, but you have to weigh the pros versus the cons. If you're stuck at a crappy job and you're not happy, is are you staying because of the work? Or are you staying because of the friends? But you have to weigh the pros versus the cons. If you're stuck in a crappy job, do your best to find another suitable replacement. But if you're sticking it out just because, that's on you. I did that myself for like a year and a half at one of the jobs. I wasn't happy, but I stuck it out because of the pay. But the pay was not worth that draining of my life. So it's up to you. And back to the cooperative kitchens, it would be absolutely great. And I understand those are very few and far between because you've got humans being humans. Not everybody, 100% of the population could not work like that. 100% could not. About,
I know
I would
because I don't
say,
think they know about it. If they knew about it,
well,
maybe they would.
there's a difference between knowing about it and putting 100% of your effort into that kind of mentality to work with each other, not trying to step on top of each other. Not many people can work shoulder to shoulder and be happy about not having management. They don't need to boss each other around. Everybody is held accountable to themselves and to their peers. And you can have a jolly old time But then you're going to have the one guy who comes in out of left field and just ruins it for everybody, just because that's that one person. Sometimes
in a system currently, I think if you can hold in a system that accounts for that people, that bomb thrower, such as a collective, because they're actually more stable than traditional businesses. 50% of them outlast the traditional businesses equivalent too.
Oh, entirely. That's due to the fact of, from my overhead understanding and how to run the kitchen financially wise, when it's like your typical kitchen, there's so much overhead and they can make so much profit. Like a box of potatoes that's for French fries costs about $35, and there's about 6 bags of potatoes, French fries in each box, and each bag of potatoes you can get about 5 to 6 orders, and each order is about $5. So you do the math, and then boom, you got that much profit.
Doesn't take a rocket science to
no, or it's even like soda pop. Like you filling up your 20-ounce cup of soda, it only costs the company 25 cents. So you've got establishments that are all about the money, and they want to make more money. What was that? We somehow left the mentality of the workforce where it used to be, I like this company, I like their product, I want to work for them, I want to do well for this company, because if I do well for this company, the company will produce more goods, the company will make more money, and if I help the company do that, then in return the company will pay me more instead of putting more money in their pocket. Well, obviously they're going to make a little more money, but they're rewarding me for putting in my time and effort to make them more money. That stopped years ago, many years ago, and it's all about profit driven. So there's a difference between equal reward for equal effort. Now it's you put in 100% of the effort, you get 2% reward for your 100% of effort. And if you put 101% in, you get 5% reward. As opposed to back in the day, you put in 50% effort, you got half the amount of reward back, but it was a stable, successful way to go about it, and everybody was a lot happier. Everybody cared more about their job. That's not so much anymore due to the system that we've been living in for, I don't know how many hundreds of years.
Exactly. Dude, you are catching on what this podcast is about. I appreciate you being on the show, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Austin.
Now this part of the show is kind of the bonus round. And this round is just, there's a few questions I do ask everybody, and they're kind of reflective questions. So take your time if you want to skip them.
Yeah.
But what was surprising from our podcast?
You hitting me out of the blue. That was the first one, and I really enjoyed it 100%. The management style, depending, because causing me to think about how different types of managements work in different types of systems. I can understand that. So just the brain teasing about it was a little interesting. I liked it.
Oh, good, because that's my idea of my podcast. Is at least it's not a law of nature. You got to have managers. It is a choice, and I think it's a choice made by the managers and owners.
And that mentality, yeah, but you have to look at the animal kingdom in itself. They do have a hierarchy amongst themselves. So if nature's been doing it since we even were a thought, there is good systems and there's bad systems. If you don't want to be part of a bad system, do your best to leave the bad system. But if you got a good system, stick it out and put more effort into it, make everybody happy.
Makes sense to me. That's an interesting point that you made it and said it like in the animal kingdom, but I think that's what makes us different from animals is we do work together collectively like a pair of like an anthill, but we're at the human scale. I think that's what human nature is really about, because there's a difference sets us apart.
Being a drone. Yeah, don't be a mindless drone. We're all capable of thought and emotion and this, that, and the other thing. Hopefully nobody knows right from wrong.
Yeah, well, there's outliers there. So what do you already know but now see differently?
I didn't know that there were that many cooperative restaurants. I knew there was a couple, but I did not know that one of them was going since the mid 80s. So that's awesome to hear that it's going that well and that successfully. I love to hear that. That's great.
What would you like to know more about?
Anything in general. It's always good to be educated. It's a blessing and a curse.
And I hope that maybe this shed a little bit of doubt and maybe think about your workplace a little differently. because I certainly don't look at my workplace the same way after I have these sort of conversations now, especially in the restaurant.
It took me a while of cycling through jobs. I think the least amount of time I was at one job was 6 months. I've stuck it out for year to 3 years per job site as much as I can because things change. Sometimes things don't. But it took me a while to find my niche where I'm happy. I deal with very small amount of BS that I'm used to. So that's a blessing in disguise. The pay, the benefits, the team I work with totally makes it worth it for me. And I'm happy with the system. Obviously, there's going to be something that pops up occasionally, and that's just life. No matter where you are, there's always a
Exactly.
hiccup. There's always
It's what you do with
you
it,
can't
like in
exactly.
life.
It's how you react and respond. You can either put time and effort to correct the problem politely, or you can just get angry at the problem, make it 10 times worse.
And I think the patterns that we have doing with hierarchies, it just makes it 10 times worse. You just get mad. It's better to like
entirely.
actually listening and working out.
Well,
Hey man,
there's an
goals. Oh, sorry. What did you say before we go?
just don't be profit driven, because if you're profit driven, then you're going to spread more bad. That's pretty much it. Don't be Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, you want to think about human needs versus before profit, right?
Exactly. If only.
If only. Okay, let me stop recording.